The recent cocoa price hikes, largely driven by cocoa imports and supply shortfalls, underline the need for this joint action. Ghana is therefore open to partnerships that combine positive outcomes with disease and pest control and establishment of commercial plantations. Trade barriers also pose another challenge. While tariffs on raw beans are often zero, duties rise significantly on cocoa powder and chocolate products, limiting our ability to export processed goods. Addressing these tariff escalations is critical for fair trade. Cocoa is part of Ghana's broader transformation. Our Big Push initiative is building infrastructure for agro-industrialization, while the Connect 24 pillar of our 24-hour economy.
For decades, Ghana has been known as one of the world's largest producers of cocoa. The entire global chocolate industry sits on the back of Ghanaian and Ivorian farmers who plant, harvest, ferment, and dry the beans that end up in factories in Europe and America. Yet in early 2025, something happened that most people didn't see coming. The government of Ghana, led by President John Mahama, announced a major shift in its cocoa strategy. The country is stopping the export of raw cocoa beans to Europe and America. This decision sent a shockwave across global markets. Investors reacted. Chocolate companies in Europe raised concerns. Processors and commodity traders scrambled for answers. And within Ghana, farmers and local industries tried to understand how this move would reshape the future of their livelihoods. To understand why this announcement is so important, you need to know how the cocoa value chain has worked for many years. Ghana grows the cocoa, but the real money lies in processing, turning beans into cocoa mass, butter, powder, and ultimately chocolate. Europe and America buy the raw beans cheaply, process them, and sell products at much higher prices. A single chocolate bar sold for $3-5 in London or New York contains cocoa worth less than 10 cents. That difference in value is the gap African economies have been trapped in for generations. So when Ghana suddenly said it would no longer export raw beans, it wasn't just a policy adjustment. It was a direct pushback against a system that has kept cocoa farmers poor and Ghana's export earnings unstable. The announcement came at a time when Ghana is undergoing a serious economic reset. Over the last year, the government has taken bold actions, renegotiating debt terms, cutting IMF-linked tax measures, and rebuilding investor confidence. Inflation that once looked frightening has finally calmed down. The CDI, which once fell sharply, has stabilized and even recovered in some weeks. The banking system is breathing again, and foreign investors who paused their plans are slowly returning. Against this backdrop, the cocoa decision begins to make more sense. President Mahama's administration explained that Ghana can no longer be the backbone of a global chocolate economy while earning crumbs. Raw cocoa exports bring in money, yes, but not the kind Ghana needs to grow into a strong and resilient economy. The focus now is on local value addition, processing cocoa inside Ghana, creating Ghanaian-owned chocolate brands, and exporting finished or semi-finished cocoa products at higher prices. Government officials say Ghana loses billions of dollars each year by exporting beans instead of chocolate. Meanwhile, European companies build massive wealth from processing and branding. Ghana wants to change that story. It wants jobs created inside the country. It wants factories to run at full capacity. It wants farmers to finally earn what their labor is truly worth. But this move is not without its risks. Shutting the door on raw cocoa exports affects long-standing trade relationships. Many European chocolate makers rely heavily on Ghanaian beans. Industry players say the change could trigger supply shortages, price increases, and long-term market uncertainty. Some European lobby groups have already criticized Ghana's decision, calling it disruptive and harmful to global supply chains. Within Ghana, the government insists it has prepared for this moment. Over the past year, new processing facilities have been opened. Existing plants have expanded. Public-private partnerships have been strengthened. The goal is to ensure that Ghana has enough capacity to process most, if not all, of its cocoa output. Officials also insist that this policy is not anti-West. It is pro-Ghana, focused on reshaping the country's future. Farmers stand at the heart of this conversation. Many welcome the decision, hoping that higher value processing will translate into better farm gate prices. But others worry. They fear delays in purchasing, changes in weighing practices, or uncertainty in how quickly the new processing plants can buy their beans. The government is pushing to reassure them, saying that no farmer will lose income because of the transformation. International reactions remain mixed. Some African leaders praise Ghana for taking a courageous step, saying Africa must finally take control of its natural resources. Others watch quietly, wondering if similar moves in their own sectors, gold, oil, bauxite, timber, could bring long-term gains or short-term chaos. On the global market, cocoa prices rose as traders assessed what the move could mean for supply. Some analysts say Europe and America will adapt by sourcing more from Latin America or Asia. Others argue that the quality of Ghanaian cocoa is unmatched and irreplaceable, meaning the world will have to adjust to Ghana's new terms sooner or later. What's clear is that Ghana is no longer satisfied with being just a supplier of raw materials. This decision marks a turning point, a moment where the country is choosing long-term national benefit over short-term market expectations. A moment where Ghana is telling the world, if you want our cocoa, you must meet us where we stand.
When it comes to cocoa production, Western North is a leader. Indeed, the people of this region are the backbone of Ghana's cocoa production. But I'm aware of the hardships our cocoa farmers face: low prices, inadequate extension services, and delays in the distribution of cocoa inputs. And so let me be clear today, we will ensure our commitment to pay our farmers 70% of the world market price of cocoa. The sweat of our cocoa farmers deserves dignity and a fair reward. We've also restructured the cocoa rehabilitation program, especially in Bia and Dwabosu areas, where swollen shoots and old trees have drastically reduced cocoa yields. Under the new leadership of the Ghana Cocoa Board, they will prioritize the distribution of improved seeds, regular extension support, and proper compensation for rehabilitated cocoa farms.
President John Mahama has suggested a new legislation to criminalize the cutting down of cash crops like cocoa for mining purposes. He says it's economically prudent to cultivate cocoa, which he said can generate income year-round compared to mining, which leaves the land barren once the gold is extracted. Speaking after a courtesy call from the Ghana Cocoa, Coffee and Shea Nut Farmers Association, he noted that preserving cocoa production is vital for the country's economy. He also declared this year as a, quote, year of correction to bring the cocoa sector back on track, end quote.
Unfortunately, as the finance minister mentioned in the budget statement, Cocoa Board today owes 32 billion cedis, and you're supposed to pay 9 billion by September. I hope you're getting ready to pay that money. That is all money that should have gone to farmers. Unfortunately, we're using it to pay debts. Production is down. Meanwhile, as production has dwindled, the staff strength of Cocoa Board has skyrocketed. I thought that if your production was going down and your income was going down, you would either maintain your staff strength or even reduce it. That is what all private businesses do. But in your business, while production was going down, prices were going down, employment was going up. And so the Cocoa Board ends up spending, as at last year, 3.4 billion or something on mostly administrative and headquarters expenses. And the thing about the cocoa business is the bulk of the benefits of the cocoa industry should go to the farmer, so that it incentivizes him to look after his cocoa farm and make sure that it produces more. This year, will be what I call a year of correction.
When Ghana's announcement reached European and American capitals, the response was immediate. Trade analysts in Brussels warned that the global chocolate ecosystem could face its biggest disruption in decades. The European Union, which has long depended on steady shipments from Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire, called emergency meetings with its agricultural and trade committees. In the United States, chocolate manufacturers began issuing quiet but worried statements, saying their cost of production might rise sharply if Ghana insists on processing cocoa locally. While these international reactions sound dramatic, Ghanaian officials insist the decision is not a sudden strike. It has been building for years. At the heart of the matter is a simple truth Ghana has finally decided to confront. Raw cocoa exports lock the nation into the lowest tier of the value chain. Once the beans leave Ghana unprocessed, the country loses control of pricing, branding, industrial opportunities, and the billions of dollars captured by foreign companies who refine the beans. For Ghana, the turning point was the economic turbulence of recent years. Rising taxes, a weakened currency, and heavy borrowing exposed how vulnerable the economy becomes when it relies too much on raw exports. Cocoa contributes strongly to foreign exchange earnings, yet Ghana has had very little say in global pricing. A bad harvest or a supply chain disruption in Europe could collapse earnings overnight. President John Mahama's administration argued that this dependence must end if Ghana wants a resilient and modern economy. So what happens next? The government's plan revolves around three major shifts. First, Ghana wants to expand its domestic processing capacity. Already, several facilities in Tema, Takoradi, and Kumasi have undergone upgrades. The Ghana Cocoa Board has partnered with private investors to boost production of cocoa liquor, butter, powder, and paste. These products fetch higher prices on the international market and create industry jobs locally. Second, the goal is to build a real Ghanaian chocolate industry, not just an experimental one. Until now, Ghana-made chocolate has largely been seen as a novelty product, sold during festive seasons or at tourism centers. The government wants to change that by supporting mass production, encouraging brand development, and opening new export doors in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. If Europe and America want chocolate made from Ghanaian cocoa, the plan is simple. They will import the finished Ghanaian product or buy the processed intermediate goods at Ghana's price. Third, the administration is using cocoa as a test case for a broader philosophy. Africa cannot develop if it continues exporting its resources raw. If Ghana succeeds with cocoa, the same model could be applied to timber, gold, lithium, palm oil, and shea butter. The message is clear. Processing should happen where the resources come from, not thousands of miles away. But even with these ambitions, challenges lie ahead. One major concern is whether Ghana's factories can absorb the full volume of annual cocoa harvests. Although capacity has grown, it is not yet at 100%. The government says it will scale up, but scaling requires capital, technical expertise, and stable power supply. Another issue is pricing. If processed cocoa sells at higher margins, will farmers receive their fair share? The administration says yes. It argues that more value created at home means more revenue to reinvest in rural communities, infrastructure, and farmer support. Yet, farmers are watching closely, hoping the promises turn into daily reality. Still, many analysts believe this decision could mark a long-term win for Ghana. If the country successfully builds a strong processing ecosystem, it could become the hub of West African cocoa transformation. Already, Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire together supply almost 60% of the world's cocoa. If both nations eventually restrict raw exports, the global chocolate industry would be forced to negotiate differently. The situation also raises deeper questions about fairness in global trade. African countries often produce the raw materials that sustain Western industries: cocoa, coffee, cotton, oil, minerals, yet they earn the smallest slice of the profits. Ghana's new policy challenges that pattern. It demands dignity for local farmers. It demands industrial jobs for young Ghanaians. It demands an economy that grows from the inside instead of depending on external forces. European officials are already pushing for negotiations. Some want exemptions, others want time extensions. But Ghana's government says the decision is final. The export ban is not a bargaining chip, but a national redirection. Interestingly, not all international reactions are negative. Some independent economists say Ghana is sending a signal that developing nations are learning to defend their economic interests. A few even believe this could reshape Africa's global image, moving from a supplier of raw goods to a producer of finished quality products. Inside Ghana, the public mood is mixed but hopeful. Many citizens see the move as a bold step toward economic self-respect. They believe Ghana has spent too long watching its resources enrich foreign markets, while leaving local producers struggling. Even critics who worry about short-term challenges agree that long-term value addition is the right direction. As the policy begins to take effect, all eyes are on Ghana. European chocolate corporations are adjusting their supply chains. American companies are trying to secure processed cocoa from new sources. African neighbors are observing whether Ghana's strategy succeeds or stumbles. And Ghanaian factories are preparing for the busiest era in their history. What happens in the next few years will determine whether Ghana becomes a global cocoa powerhouse, or whether the transition exposes deeper structural weaknesses. But one thing is certain: 2025 marks the year Ghana finally stood up to the old cocoa order. A year when the world's second-largest cocoa producer rewrote the rules that have shaped global chocolate for generations. And as Ghana takes this bold position, it sends a louder message to Africa. Controlling the value chain is not just possible, it is necessary. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Support the work by liking this video and subscribing to the channel to stay updated.